Welcome to Code with Patrick. All right, back to introduction to Java. Today we're going to be talking about, a couple of stuff. We want to dive deep into Java method, okay? So, very first of all, the very first thing we're going to be doing is Java method, and a second thing we're going to be talking about is Java method parameter. That means we're going to be talking about Java method that doesn't have parameter, and we're also going to be talking about the ones that comes with parameters, and we're also going to be talking about Java method overloading. So, without taking much time, let's dive right into this. All right, the very first thing we want to talk about is Java method. And when we talk about Java method, what are we talking about? A method is a block of code which only runs when it is called, okay? You can pass data known as parameters into a method. A method are used to perform certain actions, and they're also known as functions. So when we talk about method right here, we're talking about, a block of code that can be reused. Think about, writing something and you want to go ahead and use it over and over and over and over again. So how do you really use that? That's one good question you want to ask yourself. So if you need to write let's say we want to calculate numbers, and you need to calculate a number over and over and over again. So instead of writing a line of code, two lines of code, the same code, you're writing it over. Why not take this line of code and convert them into a function, or rather into a method? You can call them method or function, okay? So whichever one you want to call them method or function. So you take this code, write them into function, and just call the function whenever you want to, call that this bunch of line of code. Just call the function once, and then it's still going to give you the same result. And you can call the function over and over and over again as much as you want. But instead of writing the same code, it's just going to make our code looks like a lot. It's not going to make it look readable. Even if it's readable, it's just going to be like a lot of code. But if we write it all once on a block, which is called method or function, then we can reuse that code wherever we want in our program. So why do we reuse method? Okay, that's just what I just say, to reuse code. And we define the code once and then we use it many times. Okay, so let's move forward. All right, moving forward here, let's create a method really. So, but before we create a method, let's look at what the things we need to look out for while creating a method, okay? A method must be declared within a class. That's the first thing you need to know. We must have a class in Java. We must have a class before we define a method, okay? So it is defined with the name of the method, okay? And followed by parentheses. Java provides some predefined methods such as system.out.println. This is a method, okay? So when we open system.out.println, it's a bunch of line of codes. Okay, so now we're just calling only system.out.println and we get our result. It prints out to the console, right? So behind the scene, that's actually different things going on right there, and those are lines of code. But because we're calling it once now, it seems like, oh, okay, we only just calling system.out.println, but in actuality, we are calling different lines of code, bunch of lines of code, maybe, who knows. But you can also create your own method to perform the starting action. So we can go into the Eclipse right now and create our own method. But before then, let me show you an example of how a method look like. So right here we have our main class. Remember, it says you must create it. You must create a method inside a main class. So look at this example right here. We have the main class, and here this is the method that we just created, and here we call it what? We call it my method, okay? Followed by open bracket, and remember we have two parentheses right here, open bracket and close bracket. That tells the compiler that this is actually a method, okay? So once you write your static, we're going to be talking about the meaning of all this in a little bit, and we have void, and we have the name of your method followed by open and close parentheses, and then curly braces open and close, and in here you can write your code. That makes sense? Okay, so that is how this method works. But before we go deep down into that, I want to explain, before we get down into our Eclipse, I want to explain the different keywords you've seen in the previous slide. You've seen the name my method, okay? This can be any name, to be honest. This can be any name at all that you can think of. So it doesn't matter. For this case, just to keep things simple, I just named it my method, okay? So what is my method? That's the name of your method. Basically, you can change that. But don't forget to put in your open bracket and close bracket. It is important. The second thing you might have noticed right there is a static keyword. The static keyword means that the method belongs to the main class and not an object of the main class. It is not an object of the main class, but it belongs to the main class. Okay, so if you are writing method or function, you want to make sure you have it inside a class. And this reason, the reason for this is because we need to call the particular function whenever we need it in the main function. So that's why we're having that keyword right there. And then we have the void. The void means that this method does not have a return value. So for this case, for this very first section of method we're learning, we're not going to be returning nothing. But as we go further along the line, we're going to be returning some stuff. So the void keyword that you're going to see right there means that we have nothing to return. So this is not going to make a whole lot of sense to you, but looking at what we have on the previous slide, you can see looking at what we have on the previous slide, you can see that we have public main, we have a plain, and then right here, this is our method right here, okay? So it's looking kind of messy right now, but let's go into the Eclipse and let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so coming down inside here, we have our main method, okay, and we want to create our method. Remember, you must have your method inside a class, okay? So we are coming down inside this double curly braces. We can create it up here, it doesn't matter, but I prefer creating it down here. Okay, so we can have our static void what's name of the method, which is my method. Just give it a name, my method. You can call this anything you want, it doesn't matter. And remember to put your open bracket and close bracket, okay? The parenthesis is very important. This actually tells the compiler that, hey, you're talking about method or function. Okay, so we put the curly braces, the open and close. As you can see, this one is becoming green right now, which is telling us, hey, this is actually a method. So basically, what are we talking about? We are good to go. So whatever you put in inside here is going to be called, when we call it inside the main method, it's going to be executed. So let's take, for instance, let's say we have, let's say we want to print something, print system.out or print line. System.out.print. Okay, so we open and close that, and then we come down here and we put I am the king. Okay, and just anything at all. So this particular line of code is inside a method called my method. Okay, so how do you really call this right now? If we run this without calling it, you can see nothing is going to happen. You can see right here, nothing is happening. Then that means we have to call this method for anything to happen. And where do we have to call this method? We have to call it inside the main method. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and I'm going to call the method. Just call my method, and you open and close that, and you close it with that. And now this is being called inside the main method. Okay, so we have the static keyword here, which is treating this particular method, telling it it's not part of the main class, main method. Okay, and this void is telling us we are not returning anything at all. We just want to run all the code inside this block and just execute it that way. Nothing is being returned. Okay, and this is the name of our method. We can name this anything we want. We can call it my am, it doesn't matter, but remember to come back here and change it my am, okay, just to get the calling right. But for now, we're just gonna stick to my method, and I'm gonna call that right here. And if we run this line of code right now, this is gonna be printed. So let's try it and see what we have. Okay, you can see it right here. I don't know how this is not, it's a little tiny, so but you can see we have I am the king right here. It is running straight up. Okay, so now we have to, another thing I want to show you guys is we can rerun this code over and over again. Remember, we talked about that. How do we rerun this code? I'm just gonna copy this and I'm just gonna paste this. I can paste it 3 times. So what does this mean? This is gonna print this particular code, I am the king, 3 times in the console. So let's try that and see what we have. So I'm going to run that. And as you can see right here, we have I am the king, I am the king, I am the king. So it doesn't matter if you want to call it 10 times, it don't matter. You can even use something like, for loop to like run your code, run your method as much as you want to run it. So it don't matter. But for right now, we're just going to take that up and continue the class. So you can motivate this, you can, modify this, you can just, change stuff up. You can even add another stuff to it, system.out.print line, and you can say I am the queen. I am the queen. Okay, I'm sorry, I am the queen. All right, so if you have that there, that means when you call this code, okay, when you call my method, that means you are going to get I am the queen, I am the king. So let's run this and see what we have. I believe by now you get a picture of what I'm talking about. So here we go. We have I am the king and I am the queen. All right, moving forward, we have the Java method parameters. Okay, so let's talk about Java method with parameters. Information can be passed to method as parameters. Parameters act as variables inside the method. Okay, it acts as what variables inside the method. Okay, we talked about variables in the past where we have the variables, we treated variables as container, stuff like that. But that's not what we're talking about today. We want to talk about right now Java method with parameters. So parameters are specified after the method name inside the parentheses. Remember when we created a method earlier, we actually had an open bracket and a closed bracket. Right now we're going to be defining our parameters inside here. Okay, so you can add as many parameters as you want. Just separate them with commas. So it don't matter how many parameters you want to have. Just make sure that you are separating those parameters with comma. Okay. All right. So right here, just a simple example. I'm gonna come here and let's probably see an example right here first of all, so that you get a feel of how it looks before we get down into Eclipse. Okay, so right here we have like the main method, which is what you already know. Inside here is a method that we created, but this time around you can see we're having the primitive data type, and we're giving it a name, which is what we say right here, we're treating as variable. Okay, so we have a surname right here, and we want to print out a list of family name, but we just want to declare the different names, but we're going to be given the real surname right there inside the main method. Okay, does that sound like a lot? Don't worry, we're gonna get into Eclipse right now. It's pretty much simple. When we get into Eclipse, you will understand better what I'm talking about. So without taking much time, let's dive right into Eclipse. All right, coming down here, I'm gonna get rid of this. We're done with this, but not actually. So I'm just gonna copy one of it, but get rid of it all. You already know how to create this, but I can start again. We're gonna start with a static void, and the name of our method, we can just call this print names. Okay, or we can call it print family names. All right, so whichever name you want to give it, it don't matter. So all you need to do is just follow the conventional way of creating it. The name of the method don't really matter. But right here, the parameter we want to pass in here, which is the parameter method parameter in Java we're talking about. One of the parameter we want to create here is a string, and I'm gonna call this surname. Okay, so we're gonna be using that to print. We want to pass this surname, okay, at real time when we want to call in this function. That's what parameter does. Okay, that's the meaning of a method having a parameter. Whenever you call in that method, you want to put in the parameters, okay, or the arguments, whichever one you want to call it. So when we are creating this right now, we have the surname, but when we want to call this method, that's when we're gonna put in the surname. All right, so for now we're gonna go in print or let's call this first name. Let's not call it surname. Let's call this surname. Let's leave it at that. Okay, I'm trying to think of a very pretty much example, good one that would very cool and easy to understand. So here we have system out of the print line, but I'm gonna get rid of this I am the queen. So right, sometime you want to have the surname first, or you want to have the surname last of the name. So here we want to call in surname, which is a string. We already know that surname, and we're going to put in our plus. And here we're going to write, let's say Patrick. And let's say Patrick is one member of the family, okay? Let's say we have, this family is a family of five. Let's call this 5 times. 3, 4, 5. And what's the name of the second person? The name of the second person is, let's say, Kelvin, okay? The name of the third person is Deborah. Let's put it that way. And the name of the fourth person is like, let's say, Catherine, okay? And the name of the last person is like, let's say, Paul. Put it that way. Okay, so this is actually names, all right? But what is going on here? Why do we have just surname up here? We are going to be passing the surname when we call the method in the main method. So don't think too much about it. By the time it has been printed out, you will understand better what's going on here. So let's call our method right in the main method. So right here, I'm just gonna have like I'm just gonna have the name copied and go right here. We call it name of our method, which is print family names. All right, I'm gonna open this. So right here, if we close this, you can see we're having this error. That's because we need to pass in our name, the son name parameter right here. And remember, it's a string. So here, I'm just gonna come here and put double parentheses up there. If you put it empty, it's still gonna work. That means when we print this, it's just gonna print the names, the false names. It's not gonna attach or append the name, the surname to it. Okay, so right here, I'm just gonna come in here, and let's say we want the surname to be Bush. Let's say the name of this family, the surname is Bush. I'm just gonna pass in Bush right there as the parameter to this particular function or method. Okay, so if we run this right now, we're just gonna see all the family names listed out, but with the correct surnames. All right, so you can see up here when we scroll this up, push this up, you can see we have Bush Patrick, Bush Kelvin, Bush Deborah, Bush Catherine. So we can come down here and maybe just something. You see the importance of code. Just gonna come down here and maybe just write print system, just print line. You know, just to create space. Stem.out.print line, okay? Print line. I'm just gonna close that there, and maybe I'm just gonna call. I just need to put T right there, and I'm just gonna call in. Let's give this next line, okay? We close that there, and let's call our print family again. Family. Let's say all those family members change. They all change their surname. Okay, they actually, so maybe do an affidavit, a change of name or anything like that. So we want to give them a different surname right here. So let's say they have a different surname of Matabu. Okay, and here, if we run this code right now, we're going to see a different name. Let's run it and see what we have first. So you can see we have two different names. This was the previous name, okay? The name they had earlier, which was Bush, which is what we called on in our first, the parameter we pass here on our first calling of the method print family names. And we actually use the second line of code to give the space right here to print new lines, okay? And we call in, after the change of name affidavit, you know, as the case may be, we have Matabu to be the new name. And you can see right here, we have Matabu Patrick, Matabu Kelvin, and so on and so forth. So that's how parameters works. And remember they said we can have more than two. Okay, so I'm just gonna get rid of this. Let's say we want to try something different. Let's create another method called calculate. I'll just call it calc. Okay, it don't matter. And I'm just gonna get rid of this one because we don't need it no more. So I'm just gonna take it up. And here we want to have two parameters now, but this time around they're gonna be integer x and we're gonna have integer y. Okay, so if we have those two integers, we want to go ahead and print the combination of these two integers. So I'm just gonna go system.out of print line, and here I'm just gonna go x plus y. Okay, and I'll close that. So what this is going to do is whatever we pass in here as the first parameter and the second parameter, it's going to pick the first parameter and add it to the second parameter. So let's call this method right here. I'm going to call calculate 3, and I'll put that with comma, and I'll put 9. I want to calculate those two numbers. So this is going to print out the result for us. Let's print it and see. The result is 12. Okay. So you can see we can reuse this code over again. Let's say we want to calculate another number. We come in here and we put like 4, and we come in here and put like 8, and we run it. Now we're going to have two different, we have 12, 12 and 12. Let me tweak this a little bit. Let me make the second one 18 just to make it different. And here we have 12 and 22. Okay, we can call the code over and over again. It don't matter. That's why we say method are used to run, use your code, reuse it over and over again. So we can come here and say we have 13, and we can come here and say we have 19. If we run the code, we're still going to calculate the two numbers. So we have 12, we have 22, and we have 32. Okay, so we can even have more numbers, more parameters. It don't matter. We can call this integer, or we can just pass in w or something, and we can just add it here, w. So that means we're adding these three numbers. Okay, we're adding these three numbers. Remember, we have to treat the parameters as variables. Okay, so here we have x plus y plus w. We can even go ahead and say minus w. Okay, it don't matter. So what it's just gonna do is it's gonna pick up x, add it to y, and then minus the w. If we want to make it a little bit more fancier, we can come in and do it this way. It doesn't matter, still gonna give us the same thing. So let's run this code. The reason why we're having these errors right here is because we are missing one parameters. So I'm just gonna come here, comma, and put in like 2. I'm gonna come here, comma, and put in like, let's say 5. I'm gonna come here, comma, and put in like, let's say 3. Okay, so it's gonna add 3 plus 9 and then minus 2. 4 plus 8, 18 minus 5. 13 plus 19 minus 3. Let's run the code and see what we have. All right, so I'm just gonna run that, and this is what we have right here. So you can see we have 10 for the first one. 3 plus 9 is what? 12, and then we minus it 2. We have 10 right there. 4 plus 18 is what? 22, and then we minus 5, we have 17 right there. 13 plus 19 is what? And then minus 3, we have what? 29. And that's how it works for function with parameter, or maybe method. It's a case may be. You can call it method or function. It doesn't matter. Okay, so coming down here, we want to move forward. We have Java parameters. Now moving forward, we have the return values. Okay, so remember we've been dealing with void all this while. Now let's talk about the return values. So if you want the method to return a value, you can use the primitive data type, such as integer, char, it could be double, it could be float, whatever the case may be. Okay, so instead of using void right now while we're creating our function or method, we can use the keyword return. We don't have to use void. If we use void, that means we're telling the compiler that we want to return some. We don't want to return nothing. But if we take the word void away, the keyword away, the void keyword away, then we must put in, replace it with a data type. Okay, and that's going to tell the function or the method, the compiler, that we want to return something. So let's look at an example right here. So here you can see we have static. Now you're not seeing void. We're replacing our void with a primitive data type. So here we have integer. It could be char, it could be float, it could be double. It don't matter. Whichever one you want to return, that's what you're going to put in right here. And then we have the name of the calculator, the name of the method or function, and in here we have one parameter, and the parameter is just calculating. We're adding 10 to the parameter that we are going to be passing here in the main method. So without taking much time, let me show you how this looks like in real time. Let's dive right into the Eclipse. So here we're going to come back and here and I'm just going to leave that one up there and get rid of this calling up here. Okay, so you guys can keep taking a look at that one. And here we're going to create another one. Static, but instead of putting void, no, I want to return something. I'm just going to call in integer, which is a primitive data type that I want this method to return. So here I want to return int. Okay, integer. So here I'm going to come and say, maybe let's just call this my method. and I'm just going to pass in one parameter, maybe X. And here I'm just going to open and close curly braces bracket. So the reason why you're having this error right here is because we haven't returned nothing. So it's going to be giving us this red line because we still need to return something. If we don't return nothing, it's not going to, this red line is not going to go away. So what we want to do right here is we want to, you know, call in maybe system.out, or we can just say integer x is equals to, we want to call 10, and then we're going to pass in that x we have right there, and we close that up. So x right here is still having the red sign. That means we're going to be returning x here, which means we are returning integer. Okay, so but if we look at the whole thing right now, we can see that we're having a little red right here. So the reason why we're having that red, my bad, we already have our parameter as red here. So instead of red, I'm just gonna say result. Okay, so I'm just gonna call return that result. We are using the return keyword to actually return the result that we're gonna be having when we add our parameter to this one. Okay, and that's how it works. So looking at everything, let's call our method right in the main function. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to pass that here. And when I open the bracket, I want to pass the value of x, which is 50. Any case, you can put in anything you want. So what this 50 is going to do is going to add append 50 to this 10. Okay, so when that is added there, our result will be returned. But you know what? We're not going to see anything right here if we run this, and I will tell you why. Nothing is being displayed. Our result is returned, yes, but we're not displaying it to the console. That means we have to call our system.out.println. So here I'm going to call system.out.println, and I'm going to pass our method inside that print line. Okay, so I'm just gonna come here and I'll put it inside there, and we should be good. All right, so that's gonna print it out now when we run this code. So I'm just gonna go ahead and run it, and you can see we have 60 right here. So what this is doing is it's returning the value after 10 has been added to the value we passed in here, which is 50, and we actually stored it in a variable called result, and we return that result using the keyword return. Okay, and that's how it works. And so you can come here and just print in another one, but you're changing the parameter, and you can just call this maybe 100. Okay, and if we run that, we're still gonna get a perfect result. That's just 110. So we are appending 10 to anything we add up or imputed in here as a parameter to that method. Okay, and that's how it works. There is no big deal. Okay. Okay, so moving forward, we have this right here, and we talked about this. So that's how that a method, a return method, that's how a return method actually works. Okay, so moving forward, before I move forward, let's try one more thing. Let's try to return maybe a string. Let's try a string, and let's go ahead and try with a static, and let's return a string, and then we call this print name. Okay, or print let's call it print n. Let's call it that way, print n. And here we're gonna have a string. We're gonna have a string. We're gonna call that name. All right, so we're gonna open that and close it. This is definitely going to be giving us an error because, I'm sorry, we have double quote right there. Correct? Yes. So this is going to be giving us the red line. You already know why, because we have to return something. So let's just return the name. Okay, the name being passed by that user. Okay, so if I come up here and I just call in that method, my name, which is print name, sorry, print name, I'm passing a name. Let's say I'm passing in Patrick, and when I run this, I'm not gonna see anything. Okay, you can see I'm still seeing this 2 lines of code up here, but I'm just gonna comment those 2 lines of code so that we know exactly where we are. So I'm just gonna run this again. Nothing has been displayed. Again, you have to put it inside system.out.println. Remember, that's what we use to print stuff to the console. So when we have that right now and we run this, we're going to see the name Patrick down here. Okay, That's because we are returning the name that's been passed here by the user. And because we don't have void here, but instead we have a primitive data type, and that means we must return something that's equivalent to this particular data type that we are putting in here. So let's say I put in integer right here, and I'm gonna get an error right here because you see this doesn't work. Except maybe I have to start doing conversion that pass pass anything, but that's not what we're talking about today. But here we have to switch it over back to string, okay, to be able to get rid of that error. And that's how it works. So let's move forward. All right, moving forward, we have a method with if and x. Okay, so what are we talking about here? We want to make our method a little bit much more complex, put it that way. And so if you look at the example we have right here, we have static void. That means this is not going to return anything. We're not returning anything because of what? Because of this keyword void right here. Okay, I believe by now you should be familiar with that. And we have the name of our method, and we have passing just integer right here, just the name, the age of the person that we want to check. Okay, so right here we say if age is less than 18, then we want to grant that person, we want to tell the person, no, you're not old enough. So maybe watch this movie or maybe go to the club or whatever. But if the person age is greater than, which is the S statement right here, then we want to say, yeah, access granted, you are old enough, of course. So without taking much time, let's dive right into Eclipse, and just let me show you exactly how this works. So coming down here, just to get rid of all this, we don't need them no more. I'm just going to show you exactly how to create that. So first of all, our method that we want to create right now is not a method, is not a returnable method. Okay, so it's a void method, a method that will return nothing. So what do? We take in our static and then we put in our void, and here we want to say check age. Okay, check age pass. Okay, so now we want to make sure that kids are not going into the club. Kids that are lower than 18 years old, maybe 17, 16, and 15. We want to make sure that we filter them out. How do we do that? We can do that in a method, but we have to make use of logic. And this is where if and x statement comes in. Okay, so here we want to get the age, okay, of that particular student or child or person. Okay, so here I'm just going to open and close the bracket, and I'll open it right here. But here we want to check if, okay, we're already done. We've done the if statement before. If you're following the class, you probably know how to run your if statement and all that. So here we want to go if age is lesser than 18. Okay, that means this person is somewhere below 18 years old. So I'm just going to open that and close that. So in that case, we want to tell the person system.out the prints line. We want to tell the person, hey, access not granted. You are underaged. Okay, so let's put it that way. That makes sense. I mean, you can tweak this as much as you want. Okay, it don't matter. But let me see if I can take this back a little. Oh, even close it up. Is that possible? Yes. So you can see all the screen. All right. X, if the person is higher, than, if the person's age is older than 18 years, then we want to print out the same thing. But this time around, we're going to tweak what we're printing out. So here's going to be system.out access. Instead of access not granted, we're going to grant that user access. And we said you are of age. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense, but you already get the picture to enter the club. Okay, so put it that way, and here I'm gonna take this back so that it can all fit in one line, as you can see. All right, so that's basically what this method is doing. So we're trying to check age pass just to make sure that we don't allow a child getting to the club. Okay, so right here, if we want to call our method, I'm just going to get rid of this ones. If we want to call our method, we are going to just pass in our age. So our method is check what? What are we checking? Check age pass. Does that make sense? And here we're going to pass the age of that particular child. Let's say the child is 14 years old. The first child is 14 years old. And let's say the second child is what? Check age pass. Let's say the second child is 24 years old. So if we run this code right now, this method is going to be called, and that particular age is going to be, we're going to run a check to see if that person is like, lower than 18 years. If the person's age is lower than 18, then we don't want to grant the person access. But if not, if it's higher, then we want to grant the person access to enter the club. So we're passing 14 years old here, and we're passing 24 years old here. And let's run the code and see what we have. All right, so looking at what we have up here, we can see that we have access not granted for the first student and access granted for the second student. So you can even add more to that. You can even check for the third student and just pass in, let's say, 29 years old, and just run this again, and you can see that the third student is having access granted as well, because the student is 24 is higher than 18 and 29 is higher than 18 as well. So you get the gist of how this works. So this is how you use logic inside your method or function. That's how it works. So going on and moving forward, we are definitely going to be talking about the very last thing we have for today. All right, so talking about Java method overloading, what does that even mean? So here we have method overloading means multiple methods. Multiple method. Multiple method can have the same names with different parameters. So it don't matter how, the name don't really matter here, but what matters is the parameters being passed, okay? So right here, looking at the example, we can see we have static int plus method. Okay, this is the name of the method, plus method, okay? Right here, we're passing integer as the first parameter and passing integer as well as the second parameter. And we want to return the calculation of the addition of the first parameter and the second parameter. Right here, again, we can see that we are returning a double. The first one is integer. The second one is double primitive data type. Right here, we still have the same name, plus method. But in here, we're having double to be the first one, the first parameter, and double to be the second parameter. And we're returning the addition of both. So you see, the names don't matter here. What matters is the return type. And the compiler understands this. So when you have an integer right here to be the first one of your return type, and you have double right here, the compiler don't really care about the name of your method anymore. So what the compiler cares about is, what are we returning right here? The return value for this particular method is going to be double, and the return value for this is going to be integer. So that's what the compiler care about at this moment. So that is basically what we call Java method overloading. So I'm just going to show you an example, even though it's self-explanatory, but I'm going to show you an example of what we are talking about. So I'm just going to get rid of this, so we can have enough space. And here I'm just going to call static. Instead of void, no, I'm calling integer addition add number. And I'm going to open that, and I'm going to pass in integer x as the first parameter and integer y as the second parameter, okay? So here I'm just going to open and close the curly braces. And I'll do that right here. We're having that error because we're not returning nothing yet. So here I'm going to make use of the return keyword. Don't forget that. And here I'm adding x plus y. Okay, I want to return the addition of the first number and the second number. So here I'm going to call in another static, create another method. And here, instead of integer, I'm calling double. And I'm going to give it the same name, add number. But here I'm going to call in double x, and I'm going to go double y, okay? And I'm going to go open bracket, close bracket, and come down here. And I want to return, I'm going to return x plus y, which is going to return the value double, okay? So let me take this down a little. So you can see we have add numbers, add number. Now you may be thinking, okay, how are we going to know, how are we going to differentiate between these two? Don't worry, the compiler will understand. according to the value that you impute, okay, as the parameter right here. Here's what I'm talking about. Let's call the first add number. Here I'm going to pass 2 and I'm going to pass 2. Okay, that's the first one. Let's call another add number. Here I'm going to pass 2.3 and I'm going to pass 1.0. Okay, so what is this telling you basically? When you look at this value, you already know I'm talking about double. The compiler already know I'm talking about the second method right here. When the compiler looks at this too, the compiler already know I'm talking about integer right here, because this particular double comes with a decimal place, but the integer doesn't. So that's how the compiler is able to differentiate between these two. But the name right here, as we say, don't matter. So let's run this code and see if we're going to get a desired result, or maybe even an error. Who knows? So I'm just going to come up here and pull this up. We are not seeing anything. That's because I have to call in system.out the print line to print it out to the console. Okay, so that's print line, and I'm just going to pass in the first one. Oh, there's something I want to tell you guys here. So you can actually store the return type of your method into into a variable. So right here I'm going to call integer result 1. I'm going to set that equals to, let me paste this 2 down here first. I'm just going to set that to add number, which is for the 1 for the integer. Okay, and I'm going to come back here and say double result number 2. I'm going to call in the second one right here, which is carrying the parameter as double. Okay, so if we want to print, we can print in result 1, and we can copy that and print in result number 2. And what I'm trying to show you guys here is you can store the return, whatever your method is or your function, you can store it inside a variable. It don't matter, or you can call it directly. It doesn't matter at all. I'm just showing you a lot of different stuff that you can do. So having this inside our print function, so let's go ahead and run this and see what we have. So when we run this, we can see we have 4, which is 2 plus 2, and we have 3.3 as the double right here. So the compiler really differentiate between these two things based on what we put in here. If I change this right now to 2 and change this to 10 maybe, then this compiler is definitely going to be calling this function only right here. Okay, so if we run this right now, we are going to have the both of them 4 and 4 point. Okay, the reason why we're having 12.0 is because of this double type we have here. If I come back here and change it to integer, then we are going to have the both of them to be integer. You can see we have 4.4 and 12 right there. So that's how method overloading works. Okay, so it don't matter the name. Okay, what is matters is the loading, what is actually the data type that these particular methods are returning. And so that's gonna be it for right now. Thank you so much for coming up and participating in this class. Just keep doing what you're doing, and we're definitely gonna get there, and practice more. Play around with all those things that you've learned today. You can even create a simple software that checks students who are going into the higher education to filter up their age using this particular method with parameter, or method with logic that we actually had earlier. This one we have right here. So you can do that as well. Just try a couple of stuff, try different stuff. And again, the last thing I want to tell you is, do not be afraid to make mistakes. You learn from them and you get better. Okay, that'll be all for this class. Bye for now. I'll talk to you guys later.